the first question we have is like it's a philosophy question, right? So it's a meta question about the charities of effective altruism. Basically, we have this doubt: who evaluates the institutions that evaluate the charities of effective altruism? So, do you know if there is any kind of evaluation?
How meta do you want to go, right? I guess there's a sense in which the Life You Can Save, which is the charity that I founded or co-founded, does evaluate other charity evaluators in that it looks at what GiveWell does and it looks at what some other charity evaluators do. But admittedly, we don't sort of check up on GiveWell's research. What we're doing is we're looking rather at GiveWell's criteria, and we might ask, are they too narrow? Are they leaving out some good charities because they can't get the kind of evidence that you can get from an intervention that's constantly repeated? So, say giving out bed nets against malaria is an intervention that you're doing repeatedly, and you can evaluate it. You can check how many lives you save in a village where you do it as compared with a village you don't. You can get very good evidence, and that's why GiveWell is happy to recommend the Against Malaria Foundation. Whereas something that's more a one-off thing, like trying to change a law in a country to favor smallholder farmers, let's say, as in Ghana, I described in The Life You Can Save, Oxfam helped civil society groups get a new law when offshore oil and gas was discovered, that some of the revenue would go to small peasant farmers. Well, you can't run a randomized controlled trial on Oxfam's effectiveness in changing laws. There just aren't enough cases. But the Life You Can Save thought that nevertheless that was a very promising and valuable intervention. So we do some evaluation, but it's not as if there is a bigger body up there that is evaluating all the research that all of the evaluators are doing.
Exactly. Okay, thank you very much. So the second question would be, I don't know if you agree that, well, for some people, effective altruism can seem a bit demanding, right? Morally and even financially,
sure.
and etc.
I do agree with that, yes.
So how can effective altruism seem less demanding than it initially appears, at least?
Well, I think it's the attitude that you have to doing the right thing that is critical here. So I think this is more a psychological question than a philosophical question, because philosophically, I don't think there's any way out, in a sense. Yes, I think, if you're a moderately affluent person in a world where there's hundreds of millions of people who are in extreme poverty, I think that creates a morally very demanding situation on any defensible morality. But the question is, what are you going to do about that? Now, are you going to say, well, unless I am giving away right to the line of marginal utility, that is right to the line where if I gave more, I would suffer as much as the person who receives it would benefit. Unless you do that, if you say, unless I do that, then I'm a bad person, then you are going to be either you're going to be a real saint, a 1 in a million or person, or you're going to feel terribly guilty about the way you're living. But there's another way of looking at it, and that is to say, let's say you're an affluent, or you're middle-class person in an affluent country, and you're now giving 10% of your income to effective charities helping the poor. I don't think that's terribly demanding. I think most people can afford to do that, and they're not going to be significantly worse off in material terms, and they're probably going to be better off in terms of how they feel about their life and their fulfillment in life. So I don't think that's too demanding. But you might say, well, yeah, but I should be giving much more than that, right to this point of marginal utility. But if you take the attitude, look, I'm living in a society where hardly anybody gives 10% of their income. Most people give 1% or less than 1%. And here I'm giving probably at least 10 times what the average person gives, maybe 50 or 100 times what the average person gives. So I can feel reasonably proud of what I'm doing. I know I'm not perfect, but I'm heading in the right direction. I'm helping a significant number of people, and maybe over the years, as hopefully my income goes up or my financial responsibilities decline as my children grow up and become independent, maybe I'll move to 15%, and then maybe I'll move to 20%. So I think that's an attitude that people can live with, that is acceptable, and it's a way of living your life that isn't as demanding as following the dictates of ethics all the way would make you would end up being.
So, and now it's the last question, I think. So, how do you think we can educate like teenagers and children to be more altruistic in the sense of effective altruism in such an individualistic society that we have today?
Yes, it's certainly difficult because our societies are not only individualistic, but they're very consumer focused. They're very focused on your status, depending on what you consume, on the brand name clothes or sneakers or whatever it must be that you wear, or if you're older, perhaps the brand of car that you drive. So I think it's not easy, but there are certainly among teenagers, there are quite a few people who rebel against this kind of dominant ethos in society, and I think we can support them and encourage them, and hopefully they grow to become a significant portion of society. I think, in my experience, many young people are very concerned about climate change, understandably, of course, because they're the ones who are going to see the worst effects of it as compared with older people. And that's already, an alternative way of thinking that can lead to an altruistic approach, can lead to saying, we don't want to consume so much, we want to reduce greenhouse gas emissions more, and we need to work with other people to make the world safer, and that means safer for everybody, not just for themselves. So I think that there are altruistic strands in people, in many people, not in all people, but in many people, and in the right circumstances, I think you can get them to see the hollowness of the individualistic consumer society that we live in, and they can start looking for something different.
All right. So I don't know if there is any question you want to do, or okay.
I don't know if your students have any other questions. We can have a few more minutes if you.
Okay. If there is no question, so I have a question that we debated yesterday. So effective altruism focuses a lot about the individual action, right? So each person should consider. But what about the state? I know we can argue in favor of both, right? But you seem very neutral in political terms, right?
Neutral?
Yes,
I'm not really neutral. No, I don't think I'm neutral.
Well, in the sense that, like, most of what effective altruism is about the individual and not about. But
yes. So, I mean, when I write about effective altruism, when I wrote the Life You Can Save, that was targeting individuals, right? It's the life you can save. It's not the life your government can save. But firstly, that's not the only thing that I do. There are some things where I'm specifically advocating for different laws. Obviously, climate change, which I've written about, I very strongly advocate government action there. I don't think individual actions are going to be enough to save us from climate catastrophe. Also, when it comes to animal welfare issues, although individuals can do some things, including boycotting the factory farm products and maybe going vegetarian or vegan. I also want governments to pass much stricter laws on animal welfare. And I suppose an implication of my views about global poverty is that governments should give more foreign aid and should make it more effective. But I spend more time arguing about what individuals should do because I think that can actually have some real effect. In fact, I know it has had a real effect on many people, but it's very difficult to persuade governments to change their aid policies, to give more to foreign aid, or to make it more effective. So
Yeah,
I suppose I focused on where I think I have a better chance of making a difference.
exactly. Okay, so perfect. So